Welcome back to the New Earth Business Podcast. I am so excited to speak to you today. I have an incredible guest who I have been slightly stalking for a little while. We have Inarra Aryane Griffyn in the house, and she is a high priestess and a business witch. She's the CVO of the New Earth Visionaries, where she guides visionaries to be New Earth influencers. I love that. So juicy. Deeply interested in leadership. However, the topic of influence is much closer to her heart and more accurate in how she works. Having initiated men and women in a path of mysteries for 30 years, she has now brought that work online and runs 11 Queens, 11 Kings Mastery and Spiritual Business Program. So I am utterly honored to be here with you today. I feel like you have achieved so many things that are kind of on my list of things that I want to do as a fledgling entrepreneur. So very warm welcome to the New Earth Business Podcast.
Thank you.
I'd love
Pleasure to be here.
Yay! So
Yeah.
I'd love to dive straight in with the first question being around often when we start these podcasts or when people start for their podcast, they talk about like the business origin story. But what I'm really interested in is to know what what it was in your childhood or in your younger years that really sparked your inspiration for what you do now. I love that story. So hit me with that one.
Okay. Well, that's a good one because it's actually very life-changing. We were talking about where we came from before we hit the record button, and I'm actually from North Yorkshire. I don't have the accent anymore, but that's where I grew up. And my first spiritual teacher was my grandmother. My mum's mum was my first spiritual teacher, and I believe she has been in many lives. And so I was 9 and I was living with her. She did a lot of raising of me. And it was in Yorkshire on the coast. And I used to go down to the sea all the time. Even as a child, I was able to walk down on my own, which was incredible because they would never let you do that now, you know? And I had this vast relationship with the ocean as divine and this incredible power. And this one night, when I was 9, I walked down to the end of my grandmother's garden and I was wearing a nightie, and that was sort of part of it as well. I wasn't wearing a normal outfit. And I looked up at this canopy of stars and I looked up into the sky and I had this, I think, the first very conscious kind of channeling experience, if you like. Whatever I said to her afterwards, I don't remember the conversation, but I do remember the response. And she said to me, there are good people and they are healers and they dance naked on the moors and they heal people with milk and they're called witches. And I was like, bring it on. Just those people, those are my people. That's my tribe. And so that was the beginning of a journey, a spiritual quest for sure, which was very in the heart of the English child. All the resonance of the land, which is really important to me. And my parents moved to Canada, and I remember feeling this is not my land. I had this whole thing about this is not my land. So I ended up doing teenagehood there in Canada and also university. But the first minute I could get out of there, I did. I basically went on holiday and never came back, never went back there. Came south to London at the age of 23 and I started seeking out who are these witches. So that I would say is my childhood journey. I did find them, and the first pair of them were a bit goth and doing all of that kind of thing. That was not totally my scene. The second group I met were my scene, and I got initiated, and that's Vivian Crowley and her husband Chris Crowley, who are still active and known. And she's just released a book actually called Once Wild. So she was my high priestess, and she trained me in London. And I used to go and get the trainings, and then I became a high priestess. I did the second degree initiation, and from that point on, I have ended up using spiritual practice behind every entrepreneurial move I've ever made. In
Mhm.
fact, that is my system and my operating system, and now I teach that, rather than just strictly business.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you can see that weave through your work so much, and you come with such a depth of knowledge. I don't know where I found it, but I was reading somewhere on your website that you worked in property.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you worked in property, and then branding, events, like so you have so much, and to somebody that is, I suppose, being coached by you, you're bringing all of that plus the spiritual side of things as well, which personally I think is it's the missing link in our current business paradigm that we sit in at the moment.
Which part is
The
the missing link?
spiritual
Yeah, yeah.
part of it all.
Mm.
I loved your I just went on YouTube and watched your video, like your almost brand video. I think it's like 2.5 minutes, your mission statement, your way, your process. And because this is an overall kind of theme of branding over this series that I'm doing at the moment with these podcasts, I just want to say how amazing that video is for anchoring your brand. Obviously, you know how you're doing it, but for anyone that's listening, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to this video, because it's definitely something that I've wished I could. I know I want to do it and put all those videos together of the different things that I've done, and showcase it in a way that is digestible for people. It's like you watch that and I know exactly what you do. So this leads me on to the next question, which is your conscious communication story and how it relates to your brand.
So conscious communication. Do you want to ask the question more? You just or just drop
I'm
me in
just,
it.
I'm just, I'm just dropping it right out there. Just seeing what you want
Around
to come
conscious
back with.
communication. Okay. Well, what I would say is I'll link it with the work that I do now. So I've had a big shift. My name is different now from that video that you were watching.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because in the last 2 years, in a way, I have done a lot of things. I didn't find any models, role models, particularly for women, I would say. So I am a new role model, and I'm aware of that. And at the time when I started in film and media. That was my university degree. The second piece of it was history, and I was really into the alternative history. So I was seeking out how do we find not the kings and the queens and that's all we're ever taught, like a date and the king and the queen, which when you look at our life now, it is an absurdity that that would be the representation for my life right now would be the queen and Prince Andrew and his little escapades recently, slightly pedophile thing. They're probably trying to erase that a bit. And then there would be, oh, the legacy of Diana, whatever. But that would be us in this era. We would have no more than that. I was much more interested in who's on the ground and what's really happening. And this is all about the communication. So I started off in film and photography, then I ended up in property, consciously moving over to that. Did very well in that and ended up making millions after being a hippie, dope smoking photographer who would travel the world. And I had no interest in money at all at that time. And then I made a switch, and it was like, okay, now I'm interested. And the switch happened very fast. And I realized that, oh, well, actually, the creativity piece that I had always, that was my backdrop and that was my identity, could very easily transmute and translate into anything I wanted to do. So from there on, it became almost like a freedom to be able to do the property with the same creative vibe as I had done photography, and then move into, I'd always done events. So then I suddenly realized one day, oh my God, I'm an event producer. Um, you know, because I'd done so many, but I never again related to this thing as being, oh, you are this thing. So I've morphed many times. And in that, I hope I am a good role model to people, that they don't get stuck in, like, you can change it up, you can switch it. And in a way, that's the cycles of life, that the parts that are the most authentic of you, conscious communication comes from at any given time, you being able to say in this moment, who am I? What is my legacy? What am I weaving? What did I come in to do? What is my sole purpose? Now, if you can get that into a sentence, great, because that goes into branding and all sorts of things. It goes into frequency. It becomes very clear as a magnetic statement to attract audience. And the work that I'm now doing, in the last 2 years, I started moving away from strictly business, because I've never been strictly business. I've been successful in business, but my operating systems are all the spiritual, and making the planet better, and better for animals and people and the planet, Mother Earth herself. So I got very interested in mastery, which is my new topic. And the work that I'm doing right now is to ask people, often in deep meditation states, who are you and what are you here to do? When they get that energy together, that becomes their currency right there. And when I go one step further now. What I've started to do is, within these activations, which are channeled activations, I convert that into a coin that they're able to physically experience as their monetary system. Their currency becomes their money, becomes their way of exchange. And then I give them guidance, like, I want you to experience what it's like to work with team. Give them the coin, and they get to observe, does the coin retain its shine, its luminosity, or does it dull down and matte down? And what you're seeing is an imbalance in energy there. And so sometimes big leaders who I work with are able to, just from doing this work, are able to go, oh my God, like 2 team members are not a fit. And I've been trying to make it a fit for the last 2 years. And it's a relief, because I cannot make it work for them. We're just doing different things. And you start to get very masterful at your boundaries. Your message is super clear. And then you start to get the audience that you are also meant to work with.
Wow, I want one of these sessions, and I'm just visualizing that rusty coin, that rusty, when it goes out to too many people. So it's a very similar way to how I work, in that super theta state, where people's brains are like quite malleable, not in a like I'm gonna hypnotize you kind of a way, but just that accessing your real deep inner resources that are the ones that I suppose get beaten out of us as we grow up, and societal pressure, global pressure, parental programming, the works. And you found this really beautiful way of just being that key to unlock their potential, unlock their purpose. So wow, that, and I love anything that's related to conscious currency and new currency. And what I get asked this quite a lot by my clients, like, what is our currency going to be in the new earth? I wonder if you could speak on that a little bit, and is that something to do with what you've just told me?
Well, yes, I think it is something to do with what I've just told you. This has been coming in really rapidly, quickly, in a very recent way. So it wasn't like I was working on this piece. That's how I receive information, big downloads. often right in the middle of working with somebody. And then I think, oh, wow, this is the next phase. And it really is, because I made a choice to work in mastery. And when you make a choice to work in mastery, you can never go back to non-mastery. It's a bit like consciousness. How can you go back to unconsciousness? And with New Earth, with the advent of New Earth on the 20th of December, the winter solstice of 2020, there were a whole bunch of things that happened, including me changing my name, which has altered in ceremony. It came again, it was another thing that came to me, and it means shining light. And I experienced this after experiencing that I should change my name, which was a surprise to me. It was like, oh, right. Okay. Then I got this really intense lucid dream that happened afterwards. And in it, let's call them the guides, were there. And they were saying it is urgent to be able to work with as many people who are able to consciously shift things right now. Problem solvers, solution-based thinkers. So if you are willing to be the shining light of attraction in a way, then I saw this chess-like game taking place, that if I could do that and attract, then they could get to people faster through me and the work could accelerate. So roll on. I then go into this whole phase of choosing the name Inarra, realizing 1 year later after this experience that it means shining light. And I didn't even clue in to this thing that had happened, which was like, oh, you are the shining light. Didn't even register. It was just another moment of moving forward into things. And I think what's happening now is we're in this new earth. It is urgent. We are in a time of transition, and we will achieve a golden age, but we are not there. And there's this time, we won't even, you and I will not even live through it. And I'm much older than you. I definitely won't. You won't even. A friend of mine who's an astrologer said, imagine we're like this. It's the slow motion. We've just come into New Earth, and then you die. You're not going to be able to experience the golden age. What we are here for, the souls who are coming in, who are speaking this level of consciousness, are aware that problems need to be solved rapidly. Now, how can you get the best, fastest solution to the world? It's not one person doing everything. It's each person choosing their topic of influence and then influencing like mad. And that is my my real interest, is influence rather than leadership. Influence can come from behind, it can come from within, it can come as a leader who's standing on a stage. But look at those leaders who are standing on stages. There's so many politicians who are, they really are like horrendous leaders. So if we want to solve problems, we have to get very authentic about what is the area that you want to have an influence on, and become a guardian of that space, like a guardian as in a helper, receive help from others. And if you aren't exactly extrovert, then what you can ask yourself is, well, who is? And go and align with them and start shifting these frequencies. But this is transition time. When you think we've been in 6,500 years of patriarchal, systems, it's a little bit like, imagine women truly being seen as equal. It doesn't exist right now. And not from women's perspective, not from a man's perspective. It may be from a cat's perspective. That's about it. But that you have been in this system for so freaking long. There is no neutrality, right? It's all tipped in favor of these old patriarchal institutions and ways of being, and they're so corrupted and old. They've just got to go. But we can't get out of it without it disintegrating. And so it's still here. And then how can we shift it quickly? Well, it's not by one person taking it on. You have to be so truthful about the area that you're meant to impact and stay with it, if
Yes.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like our listeners are going to be fizzing with excitement and getting really vibed up from what you've just said, because it feels so hopeful.
Yeah.
It feels like um what I think one of the lines in my podcast write up is, we are actioned by change as new earth leaders and influencers, and that's what we've got to see. We see our peers making those big changes, and then that enables us or gives us permission to also make that change, like leave the country, move into nature, start growing our own vegetables, doing bringing weaving spirituality into the corporate. I mean, the list could go on, but I am so with you on this. I'm so with you.
Great. Yeah.
So I had lots of like pings that were going off as you were talking then, but almost too many to focus in on. So I'm going to go back to my questions, and this one is all about seasonal business planning, looking at the moon cycles, being guided by the moon cycles, and then also by the Celtic festivals. Now, I know that this has really helped me in my practice, and I know that it's something that you really weave into yours. I'd love you to tell me about how you do that, and then also perhaps give the listeners a few tips on how they can start to do that as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's the bedrock of all the work that I do. I teach cyclical business. So the first thing is that when you look at the ancient times of the moon, and a little piece of history on this, alternative history, is that all women, when we were not under false light conditions, and we were guided by sun and moon, all menstruated at the same time. So you would have tribal menstruation happening always at the dark of the moon. And so dark of the moon became this receptive time when the women would, in Native American Indian, there would have been many versions of this, but the red tent, they would go in, they would bleed into the moss, it was time out, but they would be guided by visions. And the divination, why divination is so important on dark of the moon, is because it's a receiving time for imagery and symbols and all of that kind of guidance. The men who were living with the women would be completely connected to that experience as well. In fact, the men would be asking the women, what are the visions for the tribe? What are you seeing? What, all of that kind of thing. And then you take it through to the full moon, and that's when they all ovulated. An ovulation behavior is very different. It's like, let's get it on. Yeah. Everybody goes out and parties because there's this instinctive nature of full moon means gatherings and means, sex, really. Sex is happening. So the whole of the world was set up on these rhythms. And the men would be absolutely as influenced by menstrual cycles as women because they all lived with them. So what happens then is we start to see a later version of this becomes the month. The month, the moon, and menstruation are all linked etymologically, that word. So menstruation is time. Time then becomes moon plus menstruation is women are timekeepers. They're the pulse and the time, and they are the happenings throughout the month. The moon is the guide. So when you stop menstruating, it doesn't matter. You can still actually start to just work with the moon. And men can work with the moon as well and feel those kind of things too going on. So there is a natural cycle. And when you add that to the wheel of the year, which is the seasonal ancient festivals, and you would have had in every culture that I've ever studied or been in, they all have, certain time for planting, certain time for harvest, certain time for letting things go, certain time for sexuality, tantric celebration, certain times for dormancy. And it's a bit like when you start to ride these currents and these tides, you're no longer working with a corporate structure, which is old hat. It's old patriarchy. It has this idea of push, 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 accelerate faster. It's like bad sex. Imagine it. No floor play, no floor play, no foreplay, and then just accelerating like as fast as you can. And yeah, it's got that to it. And even when you see some examples of pornography, that is exactly what you see, right? There's the explosion, and then they're spent. That's the end of that. That's like corporate, right there. So women,
I love that analogy.
yeah, I know it's like bad porn.
Graphic.
First time I've officially said that, but corporate life is like bad pornography, and it's got the same misguided impulses to it because it's all about, rather than resonance and experience spaciousness, it's the opposite. I've always in competition, got to get ahead, cannot rest, rest is bad, family time is bad, time off is bad. It goes on and on and on, right? And we've been fed it forever. And so what you get is women who try and emulate that, or even, as they say, worse than men. They're not worse than men, they're just as bad. It's, they wear the suits, they speak aggressively, you'll hear the language. It's the grind, the hustle, and all of this. Badass bitches, you're a badass bitch, you're a badass business bitch. It's like, oh, give me a fucking break from all of this. And all of it is to prove that the only cycle, there is no cycle, right? It's just drive to get ahead and burn out, and then you have no self-worth, and you have no spaciousness, and your aim, you shot your load, and that's it. You've got one load, right? I mean, it's so the analogy is completely accurate. So what happens is when people step out of, say, a corporate model, and their A-type personalities, the doers all the time, they don't know what to do. The first thing they hit is, I don't know what to do. And I should be doing something to produce this result, which is like the ultimate male orgasm. In fact, when you shift into this tidal way of being, which is so good for men as well, there are times that, so within business, then you start to see, oh, we're riding the current. We're not fighting the current. We're not like struggling against something. This is the time to do X, Y, and Z. And the guidance comes through. So we're right now in April, and we're heading towards, in a week, it'll be Beltane. That's a major, major, major ancient festival for all of Europe, the British Isles, America, and many other places. It was the love festival. Why? Because we've gone past the planting times. We're now in the flourishing times. Even the blossom that has been so amazing this year is already past its peak, and it's blowing now. It's disseminating. Disseminating is a time when you want information to go out. And the other time of disseminating you'll see is in the autumn. So there's two peak cycles of growth, and one is an upward cycle, and one is a falling cycle. They both have different resonance, but we're in the spring upward growth cycle. So there would be times that I would have said to people already, if you've got any new ideas, like a month and a half ago, I would have said, time to get those out. Now, you don't have to know the whole thing, but if you're getting an indication that something new, another layer to your business, another flavor, now's the time. And you don't have to get it all figured out right now. You have to marinate, circulate it, allow it to start to develop. But by the time of May, the Love Festival, in a way, that is consolidation. what you're seeing, it's called the greening. And the greening is this, it's when we had the May Kings and Queens. So what I'm doing is I'm going into this period of, right, I'm accelerating some of the kings and queens that I work with, because that potent period of time from Beltane all the way to summer solstice is once a year, and you will never get it again in that year. If there's something that you want to accelerate upwards, it's time. And so this would be the corporate moment. Get moving, right? And get your messaging together and get that product or that service or whatever it is out and start to mention it. So launching is excellent in May. And then all the way through June, it's development. But by the time you get to what we call the harvest season, harvest is very interesting because that's Lammas. And the teaching of harvest is, it's got a sacrificial element to it. It's got a pruning. It's got a letting go, as well as the build. So by the time of early August, literally in the fields, you'll see the wheat at the peak. And I've seen it where it's like day to day, and there'll be 3 days where it's perfect. And if you think about the cycle of harvest, the teaching of this in your business or your projects or whatever you're doing, it's to assess something in the moment of perfection and not to hang on to it. Because at that point, you've got to cut it out, cut it off. And what happens after the sacrifice aspect of like letting something, it's like a series of films that go on too long. The first one was perfect. That's harvest. When you hang on to a rotten harvest, it's rotten. The idea has gone moldy and it doesn't work. And what you should have right after the harvest is space, massive spaciousness. So I say in August to all my clients, don't do anything unless you work with kids. If you're launching anything, don't do anything. It's content creation. Go do all your photographs, go do all your filming, go write, all of that. But it's spaciousness after the harvest. So you should have built up something and then absolutely nothing. And I've had people who've worked with me trying to launch something in August, and I'm like, good luck. And they're so frustrated. And I'm like, no, it's like, just wait till September. This is the down cycle where you've got this next, also fantastic sales process happens, great sales in the autumn. But don't try it in August. It's you're working against the tides. So I think your audience would have to know what it is that they want to do. I tend to work with people who are at the level of mastery. So they will have already had a business for some time and tried out a bunch of things. This would be for when you are creating a level of excellence or an offshoot of something that's of great interest to you. You've already mastered your first product, teaching, course, whatever you want to do. And it would be, if you're going to go for the next phase of it, well, you've missed this one. You can wait. But you have all the time, and then launch cycle would, I would be saying, like third week of September. So that's a tip.
That is a really great tip. And as you're talking, I'm just like, yes, I've nailed it. I've got my launches coming out at the right time. So I know, like a fraction of what you know, but I do feel like I'm quite plugged in, and naturally I've had this baby that I've been working with for ages called the Brand Alchemy Journey, and it's an 8-week course to teach people how to intuitively brand themselves, and they get this branding kit at the end of it that they create themselves on Canva. And I've run it 4 times now. The last time I ran it, I made sure all of the Zoom videos were really like perfect, and everything is all nicely hosted in Kajabi with all of the workbooks and everything. And I've waited another sort of 4 to 5 months to then launch it in May as an on-demand course, so that I can then have my August off to do content creation, podcasting, go to all the festivals, speak in all the places, and then come September, I'll be launching the New Earth Business Academy, which is like my mastery of brand alchemy. It's where we
Right.
get even deeper. And so people will have gone through that journey with me. So to hear you reflect that back to me, it was absolutely amazing. It's so nice that I feel like I'm on the right path. I feel like I've just got some coaching.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a relief, right? Because you don't have to be burning the candle at both ends all the time, which is insane. And actually, the marination, something's happened for me, which is really interesting, that in COVID times, I didn't feel lonely. live in a nice flat and I have a great view of nature. So thank God, because I really feel for people who were stuck in a tiny one bedroom cement concrete block in London. So I didn't go nuts at all. And I'm okay with my own company. But my irritation, if you like, is like I like going out, I like going out and doing stuff. So there was this containment that went on. And then the second piece of containment that happened for me was a situation in life that I would never have predicted. She, who has been in property forever and been very successful, I went to renew. I knew that my mortgage was ending this year, soon in August. So last year in January, I thought, okay, time to get a new mortgage. And I tried over a year, 7 different times, and it was a no every single time. So the landscape has changed of the mortgage world. I now live in a property that outweighs my affordability with my businesses, which are much baby businesses that I'm running right now. I've let some of the big ones go. So all of a sudden, there was a real problem. And the problem was that I ended up having to do a year of deeply minutiae financial, answering a gazillion questions. It was worse than COVID because it was just this container of just like, when by the end of it, last December of 2021, I thought, oh my God, like I can't stay here. This is a shock to me, until I figured the next piece out. But what happened, and often when we are contained, like really up
Squeeze.
against it with something, there's this clamping. And then one day when I was thinking, it's funny because this has been like uber shit. It's been terrible. I can't even speak nicely about it. Like, oh, it was a great experience. Somehow it deepened me or whatever. No, it was hideous. But the biggest thing that I suddenly realized is that when I've had those hideous experiences in the past, something amazing, I have created something amazing out of these circumstances. So I'm thinking about this in that way, thinking, well, I wonder what the amazing thing is that I'm creating then to be in this circumstance that's driven me nuts. And all of a sudden, I thought, because I don't have any energy for anything else other than this solution, which I need, because otherwise I lose my home, then I started thinking, well, actually, if I only did the things I wanted to do for the rest of my life now, because I'm in my final, I would say, I won't say final, but let's say last third of life now, what do I want to do? And I thought the only thing I want to do is teach ritual. And it's the only thing I want to do. I love it. I love it. Like it's my passion, and I'm really good at it. I've worked for 30 years learning the various different things. So within a short period of time of getting to that thought, there is something that happens when I am clamped like this, when it just feels awful. I all of a sudden started to get these like da-dun, da-dun, da-dun. And what came out of it was 3 things that I'm running. One is this thing called the 11 Queens, the 11 Kings Mastery Program, where I take people on more of a private one-to-one journey, and I do frequency shifting so they become their queen or their king. They become the king of mastery in their world or the queen of mastery in their world, and they really elevate and accelerate to their highest potential very fast. and I take it over the Beltane period all the way through to this harvest period because it's the natural tide and it's when kings and queens were crowned and it's all of that. So I take them through a ritual experience. Business people, actually business people. So that was one piece. And the other piece was I've thought forever about doing a membership site, never ever wanted to do it. I've never wanted to teach some of the work that I do that's in an initiatory path because it's so visceral and touchy feely and all of that. But I suddenly thought, I teach so much of this in business, why not? Like, this is the time. So I am launching that on Beltane, actually. So on Beltane, I'm starting my new Moon Rights Mastery in Spiritual Business membership. And that, for me, again, it's like my own teachings. It needed to be the right time.
Yeah.
I needed to have squeezed the life out of certain things that I thought, I'll never be happy doing this for the rest of my life. And what's come through is a certain level of authentic truth, again, authentic message, and I will be getting the right audience for that, because of what it is.
Yeah, I'm really feeling like you're offering a permission slip to the audience in taking that time to let ideas marinate. Maybe the first time you launch nobody comes, and that's okay because that wasn't when you were meant to launch it. It
That's
needed
right.
to go back in, and it needed to have that extra little bit of magic sprinkled on it, and then be brought out at a time that feels in flow.
Yeah,
I think in my own business and launching and everything, when it's not right, when
yeah,
Zoom keeps closing down, or when or when no one's showing up,
yeah,
and rather
exactly.
than getting upset and angry with yourself and defaulting back to that old corporate paradigm, like we all have to be regimented going on time, it's accepting that actually there's forces out there that are so much greater than us, and when we surrender to them, that is when the magic really happens.
Yeah,
Yeah, love
exactly.
it. Love, love, love. Um, and so you also mentioned or no, I don't think you did mention this. I was hearing what you were mentioning, but you didn't mention your New Earth Visionaries project and what that is all about. I'd love to know more about that and why you feel like we need it now.
Okay, well, that is something which I'm also working on. I'm actually writing a book,
Hmm.
and I've asked for collaborators to come in who are the solution-based people, And I initially, when published a book last year called sorry, not The Quickening, that's my program. It's called The Little Book of Influence. And the tagline for it is helping visionaries become New Earth leaders. And I've changed that since I wrote it. This is, as you do, I've changed that to guiding visionaries, not helping, guiding visionaries to be, rather than to become, to be New Earth influencers. And so, in a way, it's like that thing that I was telling you that if we could get 1,000 people, say, who are working in their own sphere of influence and they are able to problem solve in that area and they can accelerate some kind of growth. I'm a massive optimist for this planet and the people and animals. The tragedies that we see are in order for us to accelerate, and it's not about just, on a healing path. Some of the hardest things are that we've been taught if somebody gets cancer, for instance, and they lose the fight of cancer. This is old ways of thinking.
Hmm.
There is no fight, there is no losing. You got cancer. That was your karma. You chose that path. You came in to learn that journey. And within it, though some of it will not be pleasant, there will be insights that you're meant to have.
Hmm.
So if you then take that to every single situation that we've got right now, like we've got a war in Ukraine, I imagine that there is a karmic problem that has existed between Russia and Ukraine in that area of the world historically many lives later that has not been resolved.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than turning our backs on it and going, oh, that's really uncomfortable to look at, and we're all peace and love hippies and we just want to look at peace and love, actually, it's like understanding that's the level that this earth is. We see really horrendous things happening. And it's not about bouncing over to white light and shiny, shiny, and everything's got to be happy, clappy. It's actually no. To experience that loss, that tragedy, that poignancy also enables us to experience rapture, joy, pleasure at a very high level. It's part of the spectrum. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, and that's a non-dual view of life. It's
Mm-hmm.
all part of it.
Yeah.
When I read tarot cards, I don't do the flipped version is something else. It's all contained within one meaning, and it's for us to transmute. So we have the chance in this New Earth project I'm doing. I wanted to not just speak to alternative people. I wanted to speak to really conventional people in businesses and seeing how are they doing the changes within. How are they bringing in changes within very, very problematic businesses like trading, for instance.
Mm.
And I am finding there are people who are willing to talk about the shifts that they're making. And when I have this book together, there will be an array of solutions that you could just think, well, I'm kind of like that person. And here's the answer for the solution. That's my interest in it. And
Mm.
I'll also do I've been doing a number of interviews, which at some point I'll put out with people who are all influenced by solution. I just cannot get stuck in this fear-based thinking,
Yeah.
which is you can feel it with the vaccine, the anti-vaccine. Oh my God, like duality again. No, we've got one situation which you can choose your path in, but to have you actually make choices about other people like they're the enemy because they did or did not get a vaccine is
Mm-hmm.
insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is what we're going to be hit up against with all of these different things. You're right, I'm wrong. My God's better than yours. Unless you convert, you will be lost and damned to hell.
Mm-hmm.
All of that is old earth.
Yeah.
And new earth is like, okay, this is a challenge, right? To see us all in the oneness of it, but that's the point,
Yeah.
that there is no duality. So I can't wait to, I've met some amazing people along the journey, and if any of you listeners feel you could contribute to that book, that'd be great. Well, this
Yes.
project.
I've already got a few little ideas pinging off. I think I'll be sending you some emails after this.
Yeah,
I really hear you on the non-dual approach, and it's something that is very like present for me as well, and also coming back to the feeling of being uncomfortable with life, uncomfortable with what's going on in the world, and feeling that uncomfortability rather than I think we have a global I think the actual global pandemic is we're all conflict avoidant, and we're not stepping into the conscious conflict, or it's just stepping into the problem and being like, okay, I feel this in my body. I feel what my ancestors felt. I feel that I have been shamed, ridiculed, sent out of the tribe that I was in, and I'm really, and once we feel that and go there, which I bet I'm sure that you're doing this in your rituals with the people that you're working with, it's like the karma is then broken,
yeah,
the karmic ties, and it's like there's so much expansion, and you can take that one next step, but then there's more stuff that comes,
yeah.
right?
And then you
And
take
more.
another step, and then there's more. But that's the journey of life, and it's not and it's beautiful, and it's tragic, and it's emotionally upsetting, and then
Heavy.
it's emotionally pleasure, and it's all of it. But that's what earth is. That's when you manifest on earth, that is what we get. It
Yeah.
is not the same as other places that we could manifest. It is not the same as other lives in other places that we don't have to deal with this. This is earth.
Yeah.
And it's not like we need to die to find heaven. Heaven is here. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all the mindset. And I really saw that with the vaccine thing because I had the vaccine. And it was this simple. My priorities were seeing my father, who lives in Canada, who has leukemia. And I was just this simple. Here's the choices that I have to make. And have I traveled for years also as a traveler and taken vaccines when I needed to go into India or whatever? Yes, I have. Am I going to take on this fear, this great, whopping, great, big, opinionated fear in many of my alternative circles? Or am I just going to go, this is the highest frequency, seeing my dad in Canada, my parents, and I cannot get in that country any other way.
Mm-hmm.
So, what am I going to do? Am I going to be afraid of it? Or am I going to just go, no, this is the healing right here?
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly how I proceeded.
Mm-hmm.
And when I experience other people's, like, they need to pin me down, they need to have a problem with that, right? And I'm like, I have no problem with it. I
Mm-hmm.
have no problem with it. I made a decision. You make your decision. I have
Yeah.
no problem with it. I'm not in a war with you.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what I got? I got to go see my dad
Mm-hmm.
exactly when I needed to see my dad. And Canada was really shut down, like the point of nobody was getting in there. So I had to comply to a certain level. And did I lose my soul? Do I think that I'm full of nano robots? No. you know, and I think you can make the argument for fear of the government was as bad as the fear coming out of the alternative circles.
Mm-hmm.
And some of my friends, like, I really don't think we're on the same level anymore. I have seen people who are putting up, they live in the middle of nowhere, they have no direct contact with anybody in Russia or the Ukraine, and they're putting out feeds all over the place saying it's not existing. It doesn't exist. All those pictures that we see of, like, the bombing of
Mm-hmm.
maternity hospitals don't exist. It's not happened. It's not happening. And my question is, you who live in the middle of nowhere, why is that of interest to you to disprove something about, we know that media is manipulated big time, and we
Mm-hmm.
know that Russia manipulates, like, is super active in that, and you would rather believe that nothing is happening, and therefore you remove all your compassion
Mm-hmm.
because you're super up one end of a vaccine argument in the middle of nowhere, and now you've added a war to the vaccine argument and you're doing that as well. And I've seen some of that, and it's like, oh my God, like, it's wake up. We're
Mm-hmm.
not all dying. The war isn't happening. We're not all full of nano robots. You just make your own choice and you go with it, and fearless, right?
Yeah.
Without fear.
Yeah, for me, I'm seeing like it's a time thing. It's whoever's sort of creating this content and pushing this kind of narrative out is, imagine if they use that energy, because they obviously have
Exactly.
a lot of energy for it, to do something good and to
Amazing.
share something
Exactly.
positive. It's like just
Exactly.
direct that focus somewhere else. And again, the reason why these people are doing this, for in my understanding, it comes from trauma in them, and it comes from their karma. And I suppose how can we help them? I suppose a lot of these kind of people don't want to be helped, but there is, I feel like sorry for people who are either end of the spectrum. And how can we kind of sit in the middle, like just
Well, I think
feeling.
it's when you get a flavor of fear coming in somebody's narrative, if you right there, like right there, on a frequency level, you can feel it. If they're
Mhm.
trying to convert or persuade or this and that, we are all free spirits
Yeah.
and free beings to experience life. So, heaven on earth for me has been right in the middle of COVID. I had no issue with it. It was no problem. Eventually, I did have COVID. It really wasn't a problem either. Um, so this massive issue that we've gone through, which is will go down in history, conventional history of this epic thing that happened. I did not experience it like that because I wasn't trapped in fear of anything that I did. I was like, I'm going to be fine. This is the way, and there are tragedies happening and blessings, blessings, blessings on your path and all of that. But I need to deal with my path, make my choices. And I'm not going to get swayed by somebody who's regurgitating a lot of fear at me.
Yeah, and fear is contagious.
It sure is.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So let's change gear a little bit. I know that you have got so many nuggets of wisdom for our audience about branding and soul entrepreneurship. Now, can you leave us with 3 of your key tips or hacks, or however you want to frame them, um, for our audience about how to authentically brand themselves?
Okay. Well, the first bit is the word authentic has got to be you. So I'm talking about messaging here. So the exercise I would do is I would get you to actually breathe, and we could do it right now. So we can shut your eyes
Sure.
and
If
take
people are
3.
driving, then
I'll
do
do
this
it later, listen later. But if you basically you go into a deep space within and take 3 very deep breaths. So you're breathing in through every cell in your body, bring in that fresh spring air, and as you breathe out like black smoke. Any resistance or upset or fear or disappointment or doubt, and take in another one. So breathe in all the way through the soles of your feet, through every cell of your body, and exhale any resistance or density like black smoke. And one more of those. Deep breath in and exhale. So while you're in this space, I'd like you to think about when you were a very happy child. Go to when you were a very, very happy child, maybe at the age of around 9. And just think, if you looked down on yourself playing, were you a social child? Were you hanging out with other kids? Were you off on your own? Did you play with animals? Were you somebody who liked drawing pictures? What were you actually doing when you were super happy as a child? So this is one ingredient of authenticity, that you go to where you were before you had to do something, right? Before you had to do something like a job. Back in the days of just childhood, what did you love doing? Who were you? Who are you known as? And then when you've gathered up that information, because we're gathering your currency here, now I'd like to swing to the end of life. So you go to the last day on the planet, and it's been a good day. And you're looking back at your life, and the question I have for you, are there any regrets that you had? Or did you do everything that you wanted to do? And this is from the perspective of legacy. What did you want to leave behind? What influence? And then gather that piece of information, and then come to another place where you're now standing, let's say on the top of a mountain, And you're looking over this incredibly beautiful landscape. And you've had that experience of you as a child. And you've also had the last day on the planet moment. In the statement that you make about yourself right there, I'd like you to come up with a sentence about who you are and what your work is. If it's work, because we're branding work, then add in an ingredient of that. But mostly it will have nothing to do with work. It will just be a statement about what you're here to do. So if I work with you, Emma, what statement, can keep your eyes shut for a moment, stay in the internal, and what would you say the essence of Emma is? I am a, start with that. I am a, who are you?
I am a heart-led leader.
And then it will be like, I'm a heart-led leader who, or that.
That is an earth guardian.
Okay, hang on. I am a.
That is bringing together earth guardians.
Who is an earth guardian.
To fulfill the prophecies of the rainbow lineage.
Okay. So I'm going to speak this back to you. To fulfill the prophecy of rainbow lineage. Rainbow lineage, did you say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I know what that is. So I'm not sure everybody would know what that is. So I am a heart. So you would start with I am Emma. I am a heart-led leader who is an earth guardian, bringing together other earth guardians to fulfill the prophecy of the rainbow lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that repetition of earth guardian twice is too much.
Agreed.
So I will now go to my computer. This is a hack. So I go then to a thesaurus and I look up guardian, and I ask Emma to stay in this space, right? So I work with people when they're often in deep spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask you to listen to these words, and I want you to now tell me what has a good vibration, and ignore the ones that don't, okay? So we're looking at guardian. So we've got, I am an attendant. I am a champion. I am a chaperone. I am a chaperone. I am a conservator. I am a curator. I am a custodian.
Custodian.
Great.
That was the word that was in my head.
Okay, so we get rid of earth guardian and we move it to custodian, right?
Or keeper.
They've got keeper as well. That's another one. So we'll leave both in because you've got a vibration of that. But you go through all of these because sometimes there's not as many, but I aim people at the mythic, like go for the mythical one. So, you know, there's defender, preserver. There's also stupid ones like superintendent, which is definitely not what I'm talking about. So when we look at that, if we also look at fulfill, I want to have a look at what comes up around that. Just start feeling into this. So I am a heart-led leader who is a custodian or a keeper, we're not sure which, bringing together other earth guardians to fulfill. Now that's the action point. So I want to have a look at that. So achieve, implement, perform, meet, render, satisfy, carry out,
The word
please. Hmm?
birth is coming up for me.
Birth. Okay, great. So we'll have birth. Great. Birth. Get rid of fulfill because always when you say it the first time, often you won't be speaking in fluid authenticity, right? You'll be reaching for other things that you've heard or whatever. That's true for everybody. So right now what we've got to is I am a heart-led leader who is a custodian or keeper. Which do you prefer?
Hmm. I relate to the word keeper around wisdom keeper. But earth keeper feels a little bit like I'm keeping the earth, not sharing the earth. So maybe custodian is better.
Okay.
But
I'm a
I
heart.
feel like I'm going a bit intellectual now, getting out
Yeah,
my
so
heart
just
space.
go straight into, you said custodian initially,
Hmm.
and then you started tweaking. So let's just leave it in for a minute. I'm a heart-led leader who is a custodian bringing together other earth guardians to birth the prophecy of the rainbow lineage.
Oof, yes.
Woo! Pretty
I'm
powerful,
getting
right?
like full on root chakra activations.
Great. So when you do, and people always will in this way of working, that's the beginning of true messaging. So I would now say you will use this as a tagline on your website. You change it, your Instagram bio to this. You start to work with the vibration that's correct to you. And you
Mm.
might want to marinate with it a little longer because you could shorten it. I think it's very powerful. And
Hmm.
so that's really great. And then this would be the currency piece that I would start working on. So the next piece is we've got this essence of you, which is a heart-led leader. That could also go.
Mm.
I, I'm going to have one more go with this. Hang on, because I'm not happy with that. It's too overdone.
Okay.
So let's just, go into it a little bit more. So now this gets interesting. So what vibrates for you? So I'm a heart-led leader, so it comes up very quickly. I am a mistress, luminary, pace setter, pioneer, herald, harbinger, forerunner,
Okay, the word
dignitary,
luminary is
luminary.
strong. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
I've been drawn to that word before.
I am a luminary. Forget heart-led leader. Okay, so luminary is already light essence, right?
Hmm.
So if we go back in and have a look at that, I want to make you mythical. And
One of my real connections is with like the aurora. Well, one of my kind of past lives is aurora and the sun, basically part
mm,
of an aurora seven ray lineage,
okay, so this is
which
more
is like
like
the
it then.
rainbow rays.
I am a luminary who is a custodian bringing, or well, it might even get rid of custodian now, because I am a luminary bringing together other earth guardians to birth the prophecy of the rainbow lineage.
Wow, I feel like my body feels electric as you said that.
So you get rid of all this excess baggage. I am a
Hmm.
luminary.
Hmm.
Not all of that. We got rid of I am a heart led leader who is a custodian of. See how much we try and over explain, right? That's normal. So
Yeah.
now it's simplified. I'm a luminary, bringing together other earth guardians to fulfill the prophecy, to birth, sorry, the prophecy of the rainbow lineage.
Wow.
So you're
It's like I've
distilling
heard it before.
this. So it's beautiful now, and it's getting more the way I would want it in, some of the work that I do. You're starting to get to your currency here.
Hmm.
And when we do a bit more work on it, it starts to become like, ooh. So people who, for instance, when I started doing this work, you can open your eyes now.
It's quite deep then.
Yeah, no, it is. It should
Wow.
be, you should feel, that's who I am. Woo,
I can
that's who
see
I am.
better. I'm like looking out of the window and everything just looks greener and brighter and the sky's
Yeah,
really blue.
exactly. And when you drop all the excess, so there was something like I worked a lot with coaches who were always talking about mission, 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 heart-led mission, heart purpose mission, blah, 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 blah. The word mission used to have this, yeah, to me. And then, of course, I realized it's missionaries who
Yeah.
have a mission. And the missionaries went in and destroyed all the indigenous populations and converted them to Christianity.
Hmm.
So when I hear mission, it's a turnoff to me. It's instant wrong path, mission, soul purpose, you know, soul purpose, not mission. And that's the texture when you start to drop the things that have the edge that really are not a fit for you. So very recently, when I was working with my tantric healer, who is just this brilliant woman I've worked with for 2.5 years, she said, "Well, this is ridiculous. Have you actually never said that you're a business witch?" And I'm like, "No, no, I haven't." And she said, "But it's so obvious." And I'm like, "I know, right?" But when we're trying to, be acceptable, or we're trying to do whatever we're doing, we're often using other people's language in this. So you're getting to the thing that you really are.
Hmm.
And this may need more tweaking, but that's a hack that I would say to
Hmm.
people. Go in and use a thesaurus. Start with the meditation space. So never go for messaging without it. And then you're always coming from this deep place of who am I? And what
Hmm.
is my legacy?
Mm.
From child to the whole span of life to that moment. And if you have regrets coming up, then you're missing what you meant to do.
Yeah.
You should have no regrets.
Yeah, I didn't feel regrets. I had a very strong image right at the beginning of me as a 6-year old making mud pies with
Hmm.
with my friends, and I would always be leading the group of people to make something, to play, to do a show. I mean, my sister hated me because she was always in my productions.
Right.
No, she
Yeah.
didn't. She was a very willing participant, but yeah, I was always that sort of leadership space, and my name Emma actually means leader as well. So I can really see that. And when I got to the end of life, I just saw this big stone circle around me, and I was very present with like long grey hair, and I could see all like a what was it? Just lots of people from going from old to young behind me, like my trail of ancestors going on and on and on and on. Even though I'm not a mother now, but I do hope to be at some point. And I really, it was almost like I could see myself as a baby and as this like very accomplished medicine woman,
Yeah.
shall we say?
Fantastic. How cool is that?
It's so cool.
Yeah. So right there is it's the message at the high frequency level. And if
Hmm.
you changed everything on your statements, your messaging, everywhere you can on every platform, and then you just start to work with that, you watch how your audience will shift. Bzz. It's this kind of tweaking thing of mastery that goes on.
Ooh, that is so juicy. What an amazing space to leave our listeners on. And I invite everyone to go back and do that meditation again and again and journal on it, and you use your activity of getting the thesaurus and going through, and it's like a bit of kinesiology, isn't it? Like checking
Yeah, yeah,
what's pulling you.
yeah.
That's yeah, ab absolutely amazing and invaluable, and it's so perfect for this podcast because we are all about the alternative ways of doing business
Yeah,
and branding.
yeah.
So
So lovely
yeah,
to meet
we've
you, Luminary. It's nice to meet you.
I've always loved that word, but I've never
Yeah,
really known how to use it. But
there
I
you go.
am it in a way, so that's
Yeah.
so cool. All right, so we've come to the end of our conversation, and whoa, time has flown. I would love for you to give our listeners some information about how they can get in touch with you. I'm going to leave lots of links to what you've got coming up, your offerings in the show notes, so everyone can go there and have a good dive in. But for now, what are the main platforms that we can connect with you on?
The main platform, it will be launching as of next week, which will be on Mighty Networks, and it will be called Moon Rights, Mastery and Spiritual Business. So that's my membership site, and anybody can come in for a whole month for free, experience the moon activations, new, full, or dark and full, depending on the month. And then many other speakers will be coming in who will be giving things, and there's a lot of I do this kind of work always tying it in with business. So you'll go into activations. I think you've seen them. They're always just singing my singing chalice, and I take people on deep journeys.
Mm.
And that's the main place to find me, really. Now, my name, Inarra Aryane Griffyn, is quite spelled unusually, so you will find me on Instagram
Mm.
and Facebook, and that's all you need to know. From there, you'll find me wherever you need me, if you need me.
Yes, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of people who will need you and will be so enlivened by what you've shared with us today because it really is very different and very needed on the planet today. So big waves of gratitude for you, for what you're doing, for this conversation. And I also just want to shout out to Samantha from Birthing in New Earth for
Yeah,
being the person that connected us, who also has a Mighty Networks membership.
yeah.
And also my Mighty Networks membership is coming out within this next couple of weeks. And
Excellent.
it feels like all the threads are weaving together. I created it 1 year, 1 whole year ago,
Wow,
but
did you?
I
Okay.
did, yeah. But I'm a reflector in human design, and I really do take a whole year to come all the way around the cycle to sometimes birth
And
something.
I'm a projector, so
Oh, good
so I
old
promote
projector.
others. I promote others. But you should come in and be there for the Beltane ceremony. So it starts on May 1st, this one, and
Yeah,
be there for that month. I think you really benefit. I can see how much you work in this way too. So it'd be a pleasure to have you there.
I'd love to jump over the Beltane flame with you.
Yeah, exactly. Sister.
Yeah, amazing. All right, well, thank you so much. I'm going to pause it there and we shall connect very soon. Anyone that's listening, I will see you in the next episode.
Yeah, wonderful.